If there is a message for us today, I believe it is to learn to live from our heart in love. These short lessons, hopefully, will help to inspire you to live with purpose, love passionately, and inspire others. We are the change agent our world needs. I'm Helen Taves. Step into the river today with me to explore the mysteries of God. They are not hidden from us, but for us to discover. Record on this. All right. We are recording. What a gift. What a gift to see everybody, really and truly. This is a little selfish because it's just in Winnipeg, but it was really, really fun to see people in person, all in the same room. The people that had gathered before COVID and, all of the stuff that shifted us around. And to actually see everybody in person, I just feel like I had a boost. It was like tonic. It was really nice. So I'm sure looking forward to seeing those of you who can come in April. And whether we're a small group or large doesn't matter. It's just that you get to speak in full sentences. It's quite lovely. Yeah. Anyway, tonight I'm really hoping. Okay, where am I here? Sorry, Kim's been doing all of the technical stuff on our sort of challenges and mentoring. I feel like I'm in a new computer here or something. There we go. I'm going to pin myself. All right. Yeah. Some of you, I shared a little thing here that happened. I was watching a pastor speak on some things that have I lost everybody now again? Kathy, am I still on?
Yeah, we're all here. We're on.
Okay.
I see you.
Sorry, now I'm getting feedback. Anyway, okay. Yeah, I have really, really, really been challenged. I was challenged because as I listened to this friend who actually is a pastor friend, and he's in one of the denominational churches here in Winnipeg. And I realize how far behind I am in sort of touching base, having not spent formal time in church settings for a number of years now. And it has felt very organic and very peaceful for us here. And then when, the last few years where things really shifted and we had to make decisions with going on Zoom, going in person, things were closed down and all those things that happened. And I just thought really life was going on. But tonight I want to, I feel like I would like to do this and hopefully initiate a conversation with us, because I'd like to know how other people are dealing with things in their life. And this whole thing is tonight, this whole lesson is coming out of the word deconstruction. And because it was used in this sermon, that there are some of us that are deconstructionalists. This was the phrase, and that we are in danger of becoming or creating another religious structure. And I went, wow. I respect what people say and people's opinion, and I didn't really understand. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to look into this. I seem to have missed a memo somewhere of what is happening out there. I know that many of my friends are not attending denominational churches regularly. Many are. And it just didn't seem like something that I just had kept on top of. So I thought, I am going to look into what that means. Is this something really that's happening that I sincerely have missed? The answer is yes, Helen, you have sincerely missed it. But looking into it was very interesting, because deconstruction doesn't actually mean demolition. Instead, it means breaking down or analyzing something, especially the words in a work of fiction or nonfiction, to discover its true source and significance. It says, for instance, a feminist may deconstruct an old novel like Pride and Prejudice, right? Pride and Prejudice is the old Victorian prim and proper idea of women have their place, men have their place, etc. Now, a feminist today, reading that novel, would deconstruct it and show how even an innocent seeming story somehow will depends on the oppression of women. So it's a point of view is really what it is. The same with Western films. The Western, the Wild West versus the New West are two different views, right? The New Western may deconstruct the myths of the Old West and show lawmen as vicious and criminals and as flawed, but decent. So mindsets change, and people do deconstruct from where they are. Okay. And I'm finding out that not everyone agrees with deconstructionalist interpretations, and some people reject the whole idea of deconstruction, but most of us have run into it now, even if we didn't realize it. And I was totally unaware. So what does deconstruction even mean? It's a term that's increasingly being used in evangelical circles, especially over the past decade, evidently. So to me, it's a little bit of a confusing term because there's no single or simple definition for deconstruction, and it has different meanings in different contexts. It has technical meanings in certain academic contexts and various informal meanings when current and former evangelicals use it to describe their or others' faith experiences. So it's not surprising that many folks seem to be asking from some form of, what does deconstruction even mean? It seems to be an important question. I personally feel it needs a little clarifying, few answers, and hopefully a discussion tonight if others understand it better than I do. The reason I feel it's important is because seemingly it's an accusation against those who are not in line with current evangelical teachings or fundamental teachings. And from this one speaker I listened to who recently said that it makes us in danger of creating another religion. All I have to say to that is, wow. Maybe knowing something of deconstruction, or where it comes from, will give us an insight to why some Christians have adopted and adapted to it to describe their experiences, and why many find it confusing. So evidently in the 1960s, there was a French philosopher named Jacques Derrida, and he began to advocate for postmodern philosophy of language and relationship to our conceptions of meaning. And he called this deconstruction. You can research that what you want. I'm really not going to go into it, but it was interesting that it seemed to have an origin. I'm going to take a personal path to its references because I've been totally unaware that in the past 12 years, since 2012, as I look back on Ed and our walk together, I apparently have been guilty of what this word implies, and that is to break down or analyze something, especially the words in a work of fiction or nonfiction. So that's either spiritual or biblical, and I have been guilty of wanting to break these down and discover true significance. And do I do this? The answer is yes. Often. I often do this. And I found this article that says, why have Christians adopted deconstruction? And over the decades since Jacques Derrida introduced his philosophy of deconstruction, the term has worked its way into the common vernacular, where it's now come to mean also a critical dismantling of traditional modes of thought. That was interesting. So in other words, deconstruction has become kind of a shorthand term that, in addition to critically questioning traditional ways of thinking, which also implies a refusal to recognize as authorities those who see themselves or are perceived to see themselves as the ones who claim to speak from a privileged perspective about what truth is. And aren't those the leaders of denominations that we're familiar with? In the Christian world, this translates to critically questioning traditional modes of Christian belief and often refusing to recognize as authorities those perceived as occupying privileged Christian institutional positions who are supposed to speak for God. Like, have you ever tried to question your pastor's theology? You know, I never did. I never did. We had discussions, but I didn't go into those questions. Certainly not the questions that I would today. Christian experience of deconstruction are very complex and can be very painful. These characteristics, like those of questioning Christian beliefs and rejecting supposed Christian authorities, are, I believe, why some have adopted this term. Deconstruction is a critical dismantling of a person's understanding of what it means to be an evangelical Christian, and in some cases, a refusal to recognize as authorities those who operate through these privileged positions. But this definition still leaves plenty of room for confusion, because dismantling can look different for different people. It can mean dismantling perceived as harmful cultural influences, even what it means to be an evangelical Christian. It may be dismantling doctrines. Generally, it's the position of numerous former evangelists who now identify as progressive Christians. Some are using the term dismantling Christianity, and they may use deconstruction to describe their departure from Christianity altogether, also called deconversion. I know I'm being really a little bit technical here, but these terms are coming up in so many actually conversations and so many articles that are pointing to change and pointing to shift. Sometimes they use deconstruction and deconversion synonymously. When some evangelicals now hear deconstruction, right, they immediately assume deconversion. But deconstruction is a process, and deconversion is a result, and it's only one possible result. Many go through deconstruction processes that actually results in strengthened and invigorated faith. And one person that I read about was an article that I saw on Francis Schaeffer, and many are familiar with who he is. It's just a short read, and I'm going to share it tonight. He said in 1951, Francis Schaeffer, having recently moved his family to Switzerland to launch a new mission, suddenly found himself plunged into a spiritual crisis. As Schaeffer contrasted the New Testament's description of Christian love with the suspicious, angry, separatistic culture of American Protestantism that he'd been part of for the previous 2 decades. He said he was torn to pieces by the lack of reality. Found this article really incredible. He questioned whether Christianity itself was real. For agonizing months, he dismantled his beliefs and he reassembled them piece by piece. As a result, Schaeffer emerged with a greater confidence in the core truth claims of Christianity and a deep, life-changing, ministry-shaping conviction that Christian faith and love were inseparable. Isn't that amazing? Schaeffer's experience is not uncommon and so serves as a good illustration of the sort of deconstruction that represents the experience of many who still call themselves evangelical. So, in all of this questioning, when I found this article, I was so delighted because it's so important that we in our searching, in our deconstructing of ideas and thoughts and belief structures, that someone like Schaeffer came to a deeper and greater life-changing truth that love and truth were inseparable. How about that? How about that? However, this term for most people, they recognize these kind of experience as a faith crisis. So what does deconstruction even mean? It means different things in different contexts. It's a postmodern philosophical label that's been adopted by current and former evangelists, sometimes meaning navigating a faith crisis. And I like the term faith crisis because I can't tell you over the last 10 years how many of my friends and people that I have been associated with have come into a place of a faith crisis. And sometimes it is identifying harmful cultural influences that distort the true gospel. And it's taken a long time for some of us to even understand that we're in a faith crisis and ask questions. That's why I love our season right now in the What If Chronicles. I love the fact that we can say, what if, and then there's no holds barred, and there is nothing that we cannot question, share, and dialogue. Deconstruction might be a buzzword right now, but actually deconstructing Christianity is not new. I feel like I'm coming out of this haze, even asking some of these questions. Because I want to say at this time, I'm not simply addressing a deconstruction of faith or doctrines, or rather even choose to use the term critical thinking in place of deconstruction, although the end result might be similar. The greatest problem might be in this discussion that the accusation of friends and church leaders that you might have similar views for years, but we haven't allowed a conversation. We haven't allowed a dialogue. I won't go. I'm gonna try and stick here with these thoughts. Anyway, these days you don't have to look far to find other people who have questions about what we have understood for years. And you know what? It's okay. In fact, it seems like critical thinking of your beliefs, including Christianity, has never been more popular. Whatever brings you to a place of questioning, and I hope you come away both challenged and encouraged with both clarity and questions tonight. Because deconstruction of beliefs can be messy as a home renovation. If you've ever renovated, Ed and I have done 9 houses. If you've ever renovated, there's a time in it where you can't even use the room that you're renovating. And in that time where there's a critical element in that renovation, it could be a retaining wall that isn't strong enough to support what you're doing, and everything falls apart. Or it could be another time that there's a surprise element that comes in that requires a total reevaluation of that project, and if that project can even continue. So it's not unlike some of the ways we deal with our belief systems. Faith deconstruction is essentially spreading out your messy, tangled pile of beliefs so that you can search for the truth. When your search uncovers evidence or a belief you hold isn't true, you may end up setting that belief aside. But deconstruction doesn't necessarily mean throwing it out or reevaluating everything. It means that you are just using critical thinking in areas that you, for some reason, have come to the place today and want to ask the questions. Christians deconstruct special ideas and belief without ever stepping foot outside of conventional Christianity all the time. And there's many and different reasons people wind up deconstructing their beliefs. Learning new information might cause you to reevaluate your existing beliefs. Do you know that when we started the River 474, this years ago now, 4 years ago, when we started with my passion of science and spirituality, I didn't realize it, but that was really, really difficult for a lot of people that I knew, that I had worked with inside the church, that I had been in relationship with. It was very difficult, just the premise of moving science and spirituality together to answer questions with as much information as I had brought a lot of controversy. My particular walk in this wasn't out of any crisis. It wasn't out of any deep thought, wasn't any conflict or anything, or having to lay down my beliefs. For us, it was really our walk in this deconstruction process has been very gentle, and I can look at it and pinpoint that it was in about 2012. And at this time, Ed and I were released from a ministry that we had been involved with for about 7 years. This particular leadership that we were in a model of very free, spirit-led gatherings, and they wanted to join with a larger organization and go into a traditional church setting again. So we felt very free to keep exploring. And that year, I had a very goofy experience. I was feeling a little relieved at being released from the mandates that we had with this particular group, but saying, "Wow, where are you taking us, Father? What are you doing?" And I was sitting by myself. I knew very little about anything that I know today. And as far as meditation and ascension, all those things, none of that was in my life. But what was happening is I sat in a chair, and I was meditating, just quiet with the Lord. I would have just said I was praying. And as I looked at my body sitting in the chair, my body, it was like I was seeing it in the spirit. And my hands, my arms, as I looked at myself, I didn't get up to look in a mirror, but it started pixelating. It was like they became translucent. It was like it was, I felt like I was a cartoon character. It was very odd, very odd. And I could feel, I would use the term electricity, but it's probably because I know now that we are an electrical system, but I could feel the buzz on it. And that when that happened, I got up from that experience, and I had been on the Manitoba Prophetic Roundtable, and a couple of the pastors on that I knew very well. And so I emailed them, two of them at the same time, both asking, have they ever had an experience like that? Do they have any clue what I'm talking about? At the same time, minutes later, we're not on my computer on the time thing. Both of them answered to the very minute, and both of them said exactly the same thing. They said, I think you should maybe try to connect with Ian Clayton. I didn't know who Ian Clayton was, so that began a search. And I started looking into, okay, somebody's got more information, I'm going to look for it. And Ed and I found out that he was doing a meeting in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And within that meeting was Stephen Mickey, Grant Mahoney, Justin Abraham, Jane Schrader. I forget all who was there, but it seemed to be the who's who in the zoo were all in the same place. I just didn't know they were the who's who in the zoo. But I knew that these people carried something, and we decided to go. How fun is that? In this meeting was the first time where Ian Clayton was in the US. First time he was teaching what he called step in and step out, because he's talking about the kingdom of God, that we actually can move in and out of this dimensional place, and he did his very best to guide us in it. It was really quite fun. It was the first time that we experienced guided ascension. It was a really terrific meeting, and it sort of started to bring together some of the things that settled in our hearts, but we didn't even have the questions for. Looking at it now, it was part of a deconstruction. I was deconstructing old doctrines from many years in a denominational church to a new thought, to new thinking, to new experience. And I actually, it was a gentle change. It was an exciting one. It was one that you could started to listen to different speakers, read different type of material. Our home study group, we've had a home study group since we first married, so it's 30 years, every Tuesday. And the one we started doing different things. We started sharing what we learned about ascension. We did Leibhusters, we did the courts, we did the laws of Jerusalem, we did dreams and visions. We did, we actually together wrote a ketubah, which is a marriage. What would it be like if you had a marriage ceremony with Jesus? We did really fun things, We held small gatherings, actually, that grew to be conferences as the time went on. We experienced angelic visitation, audible voices and song in meetings. Experienced receiving gems, gold dust, weather changes. We invited Sam and Grant Mahoney, Mike Parsons, and Nancy Cohen, Laura C. Miles. It felt like life was a party, really. I look at it, I look at those years, I look at those times and all of it, and I realize, golly, we were deconstructing. All of these encounters led to more wonderful explorations. And I really bless that the government that I really wasn't very happy with, that put us into our homes, because you know what it did? It brought us into this wonderful place where we're we're together now from all over the world. That wouldn't have happened, maybe, but that's what this did. And I love the fact that in the deconstructing, and really it became not just deconstructing, but now I started reconstructing things that as we started learning from science and spirituality, from all the lessons. I mean, there's dozens of lessons that I became freer and freer and freer, because I had decades of church life, and now all of a sudden there's this exciting spiritual life that has brought me to a deeper and deeper and deeper relationship with God. I couldn't find a downside to it. Science, it was a dear friend. I loved reading scientists, even like Einstein and other scientists. They became my teachers, my mentors, the challengers. I actually devoured books on Eastern religions, on cultures and customs, and to my shock, the ground didn't open up and hellfire start licking my boots. I got to just because for years that was shut down, that was locked down. That wasn't something that I thought, okay, these guys that know stuff. And now this deconstruction gave me freedom. And in my times with Jesus, with our Heavenly Father, engaging with Holy Spirit became intensely more intimate. And I learned that I am who God says I am. I learned about oneness, on Christ consciousness, kingdom realities, resurrection realities came alive. We explored things that were considered taboo, chakras, wow, meditation, chanting, hello. One of the greatest marvels to this day was my personal transition, reading books that I have been so free with and so excited to. We actually, a bunch of us, formed a book club, and we met regularly to discuss subjects that we were being introduced to from books that we may not have read as a group, like the Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Middle East. If you have not read that series, I would. We read the complete works of Neville Goddard, of Brooks Agnew, some novels, some science, some true stories like Women of the Golden Candlesticks. At no time did I think I was in deconstruction process. But this week jarred me into a truth that I indeed am a deconstructionalist. I feel like I'm in a meeting. My name is Helen. I'm a deconstructionalist. What I didn't realize is my exploration, my personal study, my personal experiences took me further away from the mainstream life, but it brought me further into the Christ-centered, Christ consciousness. And it may seem odd that I didn't have a conscious awareness when there was true conscious effort on my part. I wasn't doing anything randomly at all. But I truly put effort in to study and to engage. I think I was just too busy to think there might be a label to it. All my heart wanted was a closer relationship with God, my family and friends, and to inspire others if they wanted to discuss stuff. When I learned about scientific evidence for so many spiritual truths, it introduced me and actually propelled me to new perspectives that promoted me to ask different questions, and it propelled me into new experiential, life-giving, not just moments in time, but shifts in my life. I read this article online. It says each of us has a worldview a backpack of stories and ideas that we carry around to help us to make sense of the world around us. When you encounter something that challenges your worldview, it can feel like being asked to poke holes through your backpack or throw some of your favorite things out of it. Yet, sometimes you learn about something that makes too much sense, or it impacts you too deeply for you to set it aside. So you decide to adapt your worldview to accommodate the new information. But to do that, you have to reevaluate some of the other stories and ideas you've been carrying with you. Pull at their loose threads, rearrange them, and see if they can be contorted to coexist with your new idea. In other words, sometimes you have to deconstruct and reconstruct the ideas you carry around to make space for the new beliefs. Deconstructing past beliefs to make space for new knowledge may involve growing pains. And there's not any guarantee you'll get all the right answers by doing it, but it's ultimately a wonderful time of growth. I also want to thank everyone here on this call for being part of this amazing opportunity to grow together. So if you have if you're willing to change and to reconsider what you think, if you want to grow, you probably can't answer all your hardest questions about faith correctly. But you won't get any closer to answering them without grappling with them. Many stories of faith and deconstruction emerge out of deeply painful experience with church and Christians. And personally, I believe there is still deep love to be found in the different communities and church. And more importantly, I believe in the profound love and grace that Jesus provides.